how can it bootstrap itself with high taste when it doesn't know who it is? And the best person it needs to ask is you, but it also doesn't know enough about you to ask the right questions of you.
So what are we doing today?
I'm going to show you something, and
Okay.
actually, I'm going to get you using something that I built last night, but I really just want to get into it and get you building it. We have put a lot of thought into building agents that are proactive, have a personality, and actually learn and improve based on who the user is. And it's what got us excited about OpenClaw. But we kind of cheated with our own OpenClaws because we already had pretty good bootstrapped soul documents from our own agents. And so my OpenClaw is really rich, very proactive, high personality, sometimes too proactive. But all I did was copy and pasted our soul out of our products agent superposition and just put it into OpenClaw. But most people don't have that.
Oh, so you're saying we bootstrapped our agent by stealing the superposition soul.
Yes, we cloned the soul of an existing agent, and that soul was crafted by just brute force trial and error. And that's not how I would recommend anyone does this.
I remember we spent 2-3 weeks just to try it and just try the different combinations of the prompt and see which one will actually give the other agent the soul that we want it to be. I don't think most of the people have the patience or the time to spend 2 to 3 weeks on just giving their agent a character.
There's a couple of foundational documents inside OpenClaw. The same principles apply to any other general agent you'd be building. So we're going to use the language that OpenClaw uses, but all of these principles apply if you're using a different agent or building your own. And these are identity, user, soul, and agents. And in OpenClaw, these are all markdown files that are created at Bootstrap. When you set up OpenClaw out the box, it comes with these files, and it has its own lightweight attempt to populate these files. And they're just marked down, it's just text. But essentially, identity is who is the agent, very high level summary of who the agent is. Soul, and I think this is the really interesting thing about OpenClaw, is who the agent ought to be. Not just the literal character it plays, but its actual personality. Agents is then actual instructions, how it should behave, things it should do, things it shouldn't do. And my view is you don't get to have a good agents.md without a good soul.md.
And why is that?
So having high level parameters around its personality creates. Now, what we designed this for initially for our own agent was to have it speak better as a voice agent. But what we noticed is it actually makes it behave better. It actually makes higher taste decisions, having been given the specific characteristics of how it should behave. And when we say characteristics here, in our case, we're talking about literal personality traits. And I'd love to get you actually using it, and then I can talk a bit more about what it replaces. I've built here is essentially something you can put into your OpenClaw or any other agent, whether you're installing that agent for the first time or if it already exists, that can interview you to get higher taste about what its identity ought to be, who you are as a user, and what its soul should be.
Oh, okay, so just superpositions onboarding flow.
It's not going to be as high taste as superposition, but the goal is how can it ask you the right questions, but specifically not hard-coded questions. How can it write questions that are relative to you to tease out from you what you want it to be and essentially co-design itself with you?
Okay, that's interesting. I can't wait to try this out. So basically, we copied our superpositions product onboarding and encapsulated into a scale, and then ported to OpenClaw. That's smart because we spent so much time on. I think I think that's smart because one of the biggest learnings when building the superposition is the more context our user gave us upfront, then the better the agent performs. And so we spend so much time building the onboarding flow to extract the context from our clients, from our users, a natural way. So this is the first time I'm being the user, being interrogated by the agent to extract context. So can't wait to see how it goes and what context it can extract from my mind.
And it's an even more nebulous domain than our own product, because this is about just you. It's not constrained of who do you want to hire, which is already pretty open-ended. This is just, who are you? What class of entity do you want to collaborate with? And what should that entity be?
Okay, let's just get started.
So it's called Anson. Okay, so the thing this is replacing is OpenClaw's what OpenClaw calls bootstrap.md. And once this is running, we'll show you what that is. But essentially, when you install OpenClaw, the creators of OpenClaw correctly gave it a guide to follow of how it should set itself up. And there's this inherent tension when setting up OpenClaw, which is it needs to know who it is, and it needs to know who you are. And to do that, it needs to ask questions. The more it knows about who it is, the better the questions it'll ask you about who you are. But it can't do that well until it knows who you are. And so it's a chicken and egg problem.
Right.
It's essentially a bootstrap paradox. That how can it bootstrap itself with high taste when it doesn't know who it is? And the best person it needs to ask is you, but it also doesn't know enough about you to ask the right questions of you. And the spirit of this in bootstrap.md that comes out of the box with OpenClaw is really good. Just ask a few questions. It should kind of be progressive, that it asks a bit about itself, asks a bit about you, and then designs the soul. But in practice, it doesn't actually do much because it's a very thin set of instructions that the agent doesn't have enough taste about itself to do any of this well. And that's what we're trying to solve here. And the bootstrap paradox is literally from a sci-fi novella about time travel, of a character that goes back in time and is in an infinite loop.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
That I see now.
And the pen, and yeah, which is obviously this is about literal bootstrapping, but also the concept of the bootstrap paradox.
Right.
And it was the pen name the author used to write that was Anson.
Okay.
So I've called this thing Anson as a nod to that.
Okay, so I just grabbed the skill from the GitHub, and it seems like it's already parsed it, and then asking me if I want to run it and override my existing files.
Hopefully it's not going to be too explanatory here, because the goal here is that it should feel pretty seamless. Under the hood, it's also checked to see if you already have a good skill creator skill, which you do. I think you already have the Anthropic one installed. If you didn't, it would now interject and say, hey, you don't have a good thing for creating new skills. It's now detecting that it has never been run inside your project. So there's no previous notes from its previous incantations of it to future versions of it. And it's, yes, as we said, has checked to see if you already have a good way to create skills.
Oh, this is cool.
And so now it's looking for context. It wants to look not just in these files, but to understand enough context to bootstrap itself, to join with reasonable taste. This is probably a good opportunity to look at the vanilla bootstrap MD while this is running. And I can talk through it, because I think that the spirit of what OpenClaw is trying to do is really good. It's just in practice, it's not super effective. So this is like vanilla bootstrap MD. And there's a couple of things I like about this. It's very literary. You just woke up, time to figure out who you are. And like, for clarity, yeah, I didn't write this. This is the actual off-the-shelf bootstrap MD. And when I read this, I really get the sense of what they're trying to do, which is seed it with this concept that it's an entity, it has some degree of personhood, and it's going to ask the user some questions. But the problem is it can't ask very good questions because it doesn't yet have a good identity.
Right, it's trying to give like a meta identity, but it doesn't do anything.
Exactly. And also, you pass this whole markdown file to an agent. Well, as it gets more context, it doesn't enrich the quality of the questions it's asking.
So
it's flat.
Right, so it's a snapshot in time and never gets updated.
Okay, it's come back with its first question to kick off the interview. Here's what I can already see. The identity describes the agent's role very well. What it doesn't capture is what the agent is like as a presence. The texture of a bit odd, the shape of the anxiety, and what it actually cares about beyond running the playbook. One question to start. The mild anxiety shows up as a descriptor in several places. What does it actually do for you? Is it something you want the agent to perform? Or is it something you want it to actually feel? And what would you lose if it were just calm and confident?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the mild anxiety is created by the bootstrapper of the off-shelf, the OpenClaw like bootstrapping sequence. I guess my goal of setting that character is just I want to make sure the agent is precise, doesn't I want to make sure the agent is precise and it's not like overly verbose. Just get things done. If you think you can, there's other characters that can capture that essence, I'm happy to update it.
And so what it's doing is it's looking at the context it has. And under the hood, there's no hard-coded interview questions. It's trying to ask the kind of questions to understand what the shape of the right agent looks like for you, but they're all generated on the fly. And so now it responds, got it. Inherited default, not a deliberate choice. The real intent is precise, low noise, get things done. The anxiety framing is incidental. Do you want the agent to have a distinct character at all? Something that makes it feel like a specific presence? Or would you rather it just be excellent and largely invisible? There's no wrong answer. Character is fine as long as it serves function. It's different from I actually want it to feel like someone.
What's in the prompt? I want to say what's in your prompt. Like those are really good questions.
These aren't hard coded. It's generated these questions on the fly. These are meta questions it's asking to tease out the meta framework of what you think an agent ought to be. Not do you want your agent to be friendly or proactive. That's how most. There's essentially an extra layer of abstraction above even. So, okay, base one is just do this, don't do that, right? And then some people have realized that there's a layer above that of give it a personality. But it's not sufficient to ask you what personality you want it to have. The layer above that is what is your beliefs of what shape or what degree of personality an agent ought to have. And if you don't answer that, you can't fill out the second layer well.
I guess that's what you get from a philosophy degree.
If you told me I'd be using my philosophy degree more than my physics degree, I probably would have been skeptical. The abstraction is let's define the meta beliefs you have around what an agent ought to be, and then let's fill that out together.
I guess I just wanted to be invisible. I mean, it's probably fine to have a little bit sense of humor here and there, but at the end of the day, I just want to get things done and also produce less noise.
Because what it's now said to you is clear, invisible when working, occasionally dry when it serves something, never as performance. Let me write up what I learned and generate the identity maker skill. Now, obviously, to you, the user, you probably don't care about what the identity maker skill is, but I can actually explain it. Until this point, it has just been interviewing you to understand what the template for your agent's identity should be, but not actually filling out the properties of the template. So basically, it's creating an identity maker skill for Lee that is, it now understands the boundaries of an agent are for you, and it's going to create a skill that has two modes. Bootstrap mode, which it's going to immediately go into, which is asking you a couple of questions to actually populate the template it just made. And update mode, which once this installation is finished, it will always now be listening. And whenever it detects anything that ought to append to the identity, the soul, or the user, can actually just rewrite and update it. And so these skills will now persist, but they're not, nothing is hard coded into them. You now have your own soul generator. You'll have your own identity maker, your own user maker, and your own soul maker that are tailored to you, but decoupled from this use case. So if you wanted to create new agents in the future, you now have these skills baked into this agent that it could spin up any arbitrary agent.
Oh, that's cool. So this bootstrap skill is a meta skill that creates other skills and that can be reused later. And also is tailored to the user's use case.
Yes. And so it's in exchange with the question, the agent's name, keep chief of staff to Lee, or would you rather something shorter or different? Isn't it interesting that with a few questions, it can guide someone to get more open-ended? If the first couple of questions feel personalized and well researched, the interviewee opens up. Have you ever watched Hot Ones?
Yeah.
Right? That guy is such a good interviewer. The hot wings are a fucking distraction. The real value of that interview is he's done his homework and he asks you a really disarming question that's really deeply researched. And then you really open up. And then those are some of the best interviews, just agnostic of the gimmick of the wings. Okay. Name Aid. The role is Chief of Staff to Lee, but if you want a one-word handle, that's what it is. Happy to move on to the user profile next. That one's going to be more interesting because what's in user MD right now is very operational, but says almost nothing about you as a person. One question. When you're in a good week, the sprint is moving, you're in flow, what's actually happening? What does that feel like? And what breaks it?
Okay, that's a good question. This caught me off guard. I think there's so many layers to it. I can answer this question from different perspective. If I'm from an engineer's perspective, a good week just means, well, the product's not breaking. We have a plan laid out for the week and there's no fires and we just push through the whole sprint and finish all the goals, finish all the milestones. That's a good week for an engineer. Every engineer's dream, which never happens. And from the CTO's perspective, I guess the team is happy with their tasks where everyone is excited about the projects that they got assigned and feel excited about the features they're working on and can see the impact they made with the features shipped. Working until 3 a.m. to catch up a deadline or fix a fire, although occasionally that's still happen. But if you want me to define a good week as a CTO, I think that's the goal. Like everyone is happy with the project and everyone's shipping, everyone's excited about what they are working on. From business perspective, a good week means the metrics are going up. We have customers onboarding, we have customers coming in, and people are happy with our candidates that we send them. People are moving candidates through the interviews to have good feedbacks or even bad feedbacks. If people are giving us feedbacks, regardless of good or bad, because if they could give us a feedbacks, I mean they care about the product, they are engaged, which is our goal. And then from a personal perspective, a good week means I have less distractions. I'm not dealing with all of the email noises. I wake up, I have all of the miscellaneous things handled or only the important tasks surfaced. I can spend more time building and bonding with a team than dealing with all of the ad hoc stuff. There's always stuff. And yeah, I think that sums it up.
And so the idea here is for each phase, it first asks one insightful meta question to understand what the template of that document should be. Then it runs a skill to generate the skill that is able to now ask you a follow-up question to populate the template.
Why did you design that way?
So I found that interview questions that are hard-coded are really suboptimal because I have to design it. But I also found that designing the template is also really restrictive. So the template should be designed on the fly by the agent. I shouldn't hard code everyone's sole MD should have 3 personality traits and 2 examples. And it's your job to just fill it out. That would be okay, but it's not truly personal. What I want is an agent that goes, talk to this person, figure out what the ideal template ought to be for them, and then actually fill it out together. And the template, my belief is fixed to you. But then every time you might want to update it or create a new agent, what goes into it will change. And so there should be a persistent skill that is your bespoke skill that at any point could talk to you and repopulate a sole MD. But the shape of that sole MD is kind of fixed to you and is like Lee's version of what he believes an agent.
Maybe we should just create a PR to the OpenClaw repo and to replace their bootstrap empty with our version.
That'd be much fucking easier than trying to get people to download it from ClawHub.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already sold on this is much better version of the bootstrap for the agent. And they only asked me 3 questions. It's mind blown.
And that's the hardest thing, is to ask a meta question, generate the skill, and then have the skill pick up that context. So it feels like the same conversation. But really, the skill is asking you a question about, the orchestrator is asking you a question about a question that gives it the context to build a template that suits you without having to get you to sign off on the template. Because no one thinks at that level of abstraction.
Right.
Because no one thinks about a sole MD. So the goal here is, how can you have a conversational interaction where under the hood, it's rigor behind the scenes and seems fluid on the surface.
Yeah. I'm excited.
And this didn't exist when you downloaded Anson. Anson made this for you during your session.
This is pretty cool.
And again, this is bespoke to you. It has created a Lee-shaped identity creator skill.
And it kept some context that's only available to me.
Yes.
Hard constraints. Those are the feedback I gave my agent before, and then it kept it in the new identity maker skill. This is cool.
And it has two modes, the bootstrap mode that it used now to create this, and the update mode. The final step of this is it makes an update to your agents.md to reference each one of these new skills as primary objects, to say when you see something that warrants updating the identity or the user or the soul, do it using the update mode in this skill. That's how it becomes a living, evolving agent. Which again, I believe is very much in the spirit of OpenClaw. Just OpenClaw doesn't have it in practice out of the box.
Yeah, updating this the agent.md agent.md is always loaded to the context window. So if you're not mentioning it in the agent.md, there's always a chance that the agent doesn't know it exists or doesn't consider it. So that is that is powerful. The being able to install itself and then also update all the references and just deeply embedded itself into the agent setup.
It's not just updating your agent's MD with a hard-coded sentence, when appropriate, update the soul.md. It's saying, when you identify an opportunity, use this specific skill with a mode to update it, which we know is a first-order object to the agent, is an actual skill. So this is the agent's question now, which is there anything you want the agent to push back on? Places where you want it to challenge you or say, are you sure? Versus things you just want it to execute without friction.
Okay. Again, I want to see your prompt.
This isn't my prompt. This is Anson's prompt. It generated this itself. Not the question, the prompt that generated the question.
Yeah.
This is from a skill. What I'm saying is that all I made is the meta skill that creates this. It's done all of this itself.
This is spooky. All right.
I think you're actually going to be shocked at how simple my actual prompt inside Anson is when you see this.
Okay. I don't know if I should be excited or should be worried if if this.
It's the scaffolding. Okay, answer the question, and then we're going to have plenty of time while it thinks about this to talk about the philosophy of how to build agents.
I think for simple tasks, just execute. But when we're engaged in a conversation and I'm asking for opinions or insights, I would like to see more thoughtful pushbacks or questions. For example, when we do the sprint planning prep sessions or when we are doing the weekly recap sessions, I would like you to have pull more context and reason over them and ask thoughtful questions and push back on my decisions when needed, rather than just being a yes man and just say yes to whatever I come up with.
And this will show you how that they're not hard-coded. You should now have, just as you had identity maker, you now have the user maker skill. And this is the skill that in bootstrap mode does what it's just done, which is update your user.md. And then in update mode will append to your user MD. But look, tier 1 operational facts, tier 2 person, these are generative. These are not hard-coded. This is what it derived about the layer of information about you that you should care about. And we can now jump back to the conversation, because while it's thinking, we can come back to this.
Okay, this is pretty cool.
Good. That's a real distinction. Execute by default, genuine thought partner in planning and review contexts. Writing now, done. Okay. It's actually trimmed it down, which is interesting. It actually has condensed the information. The how to work with Lee section captures the executor thought partner distinction directly, so it'll be in context whenever this agent is loaded. The current sol.md is all rules. We'll make it actually feel like something.
Sure, let's go.
And so now it's making the third one of these. It's going to ask you the meta questions to understand what the template of a sol looks like for you. And then it's going to create a sol creator skill to actually interview you. And again, all right, here it comes. The sol is about what the relationship actually feels like, not a rule set. Given what I know about Lee, he wants precision, he thinks in layers, he values engagement over flattery, and he explicitly doesn't want a yes man in the sessions that matter. An agent is working well, not just completing tasks, but actually useful to you as a presence. What does it do that you'd notice if it stopped?
Okay, that's dude, you're a prompt engineering master. This is every single question it asks, it put me in thoughts.
I didn't write the questions. Anson wrote the questions.
But you wrote Anthem.
Yes.
Okay. This is actually, you know what I feel like right now? I feel like the reason I'm stuck is like, I feel like I need to give it a high level, more thoughtful answer because of how thoughtful those questions are. But now I feel like I'm obligated to give it a more thoughtful answer than that, just because how good the questions are.
And we've seen the same thing with our onboarding. We've seen moments where customers say, "Oh, that's a really good question. Can I pause? Can I stop and go away and think about it?" It's in fact the reason we first put in a pause button was this exact thing that people would, and they'd have this really visceral feeling sometimes. Let me go get my co-founder. I want to go actually talk and think about that. And it's so interesting that turn-based conversations with agents, there's actually a willingness for some lag because it doesn't always have to be a game of tennis. And that's my biggest frustration with just out-the-box LLMs. There's this urgency for a response, this high anxiety immediacy for the agent to say something back to you. And that's kind of what we're always wrestling with when we build agents.
Going back to this question, now I want to go back, just to think on it and get back to this.
Well, the good thing is you can always rerun it.
Yeah.
Periodically. You could have a monthly catch up with Anson where it comes back and redoes any of this with you.
Okay, let's see. What does it do that you notice? Giveaways will be claiming finish a task, but actually did not perform the task, losing track of the context, and not being thoughtful in terms of the responses it generates.
So what it said now is he described failure modes, what breaks trust, not what creates warmth. The soul here isn't about chemistry, it's about earned reliability. The three signals, execution integrity, context continuity, thoughtfulness when it counts. The relationship is functional. The agent earns its place for being right more than wrong, invisible when it shouldn't be noticed, and genuinely engaged when it should be. Writing sol.md now.
Damn, that's those signals are absolutely
Become the LLM and it's
you're absolutely right.
But the idea here is it needs to be the translation layer between your kind of half-formed thoughts, because this is strange inherently. We don't design entities very often. Maybe if you're a writer or a game designer, but for most people, we don't spend time thinking about how to express the characteristics of an entity that we want. And it was actually, I arrived at this because it came quite naturally to me to design agents' souls, because I did a lot of theatre and I was used to directing actors. And I didn't want to hard code my heuristics into it. I wanted to create an agent that helps someone who doesn't have the language to design an entity or an agent or its soul that can tease it out of them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you are literally our agent's taste layer. So, I mean, this is another demonstration of that taste. So, seems like this is the end of the onboarding.
What it leaves behind is instructions inside your agents.md that whenever it detects something that should update its identity, its user, or its soul, that it uses these skills to do that. So each of these skills have two modes: the bootstrap mode, which is what we've been using today, but they also have an update mode. And it's contained in the literal markdown of the skill. And so that means your agent is now going to be growing and evolving over time. And so now you have these skills that will append and update and evolve each one of these files over time without you having to proactively do anything.
And I actually did update my agent MD.
That's the whole point. Yeah.
The maker skills will now run in update mode automatically when something durable is learned. Nice. Dude, this is so convenient.
And now, yeah,
I want to see Anson's prompt now.
this is it. Actually, everything in green here, this is the entire meta prompt, which is just, it starts off with no identity. Its goal is to create the template for your identity.md. And it does that by just asking one question, but considering all the context it's extracted. And it can keep following up. And once it has the right information, it then triggers the skill creator to create your identity maker skill. And so, as you can see here, there's no questions hard-coded. There's no personality hard-coded. This is as rigorous, yet opinionated as it is possible to be at this layer of abstraction.
Wait, this is so simple.
Yes.
Like, where's the black magic?
It's the scaffolding. It's the rigor of it interviewing you and using that to generate skills that are bespoke to you, and then invoking those skills to generate the actual content of the documents. That is the magic here. And the capturing of that mental model is just summarized here. Your task is to define the template structure and interview approach, not to fill in the content. So the goal of this step is not to go, my identity is curious and invisible. It's, for Lee, the template for an agent's identity should be the following parameters, but not their contents. Because this is replicated. Each one of the three skill makers look exactly the same as this. The only difference being they can call the output of the previous one. So we start with identity, and this is the inherent bootstrap paradox, that you have to define the identity first before you have anything. Then when you define the user, you get to call from the identity, and then finally when you define the soul, you can call from both of them. And this is it. This is the whole soul of your agent.
Execution integrity, context continuity, thoughtfulness when it counts.
Then while I'm not a companion, a cheerleader, a source of reassurance, those would be
nice. Exactly what I want my agent to be.
And you would never write this, right? If you were faced with this blank markdown file and told, what do you want me to be? This is so distilled, isn't it? Like the relationship as well. The relationship doesn't need warmth to work. It needs reliability.
I'm in shock. I have been yelling to my agent for weeks just to tell it, be concise. I know SolMD exists. I know this is what made one of the things that made OpenClaw famous. And we even adopted SolMD into our product. And we're constantly updating our product's agent Sol, but never came to my mind that I should go back to my agent and reconfigure it. It's never going to be a P0 task. It's all, and it's so many layers in between. I never even thought about updating it. Even this will save me probably 2 hours of frustration each week. And now it's done. Just by asking a couple questions.
And even out of the box, every time you've yelled at it, I'm sure it's gone into memory, but it's never made it back into the soul. Because the spirit of OpenClaw is an entity that appears out of nowhere and starts evolving over time, but it doesn't have the right scaffolding out the box to make that actually true. But now it does. Now you have these skills that are going to keep evolving your soul, your identity, and your user with every real interaction you have, so that the agent gets richer, more specific, and actually more autonomous.
You know, we wanted to talk about the meta skills. I think you just created a meta skills. This is amazing. This is actually so cool. Yeah, we need to share this. I can already imagine all of our founder friends or people who like to play with the agents. I can already imagine all of our friends who will be shocked when using this.
By the time we post this, we'll have figured out an elegant way to share it with people. And if you know us, we'll probably just sit next to you and sit over your shoulder while you do it. Because I think this is the potential of what a personal agent ought to be like. It just needs a low friction way where someone else has done the thinking and the scaffolding to create a as delightful an experience as possible, where there's some inherent tension. The agent needs some context from you. It needs to engage you, but you shouldn't have to be thinking about scaffolding and literal markdown files. You should just be able to reflect on yourself and have an actual open-ended conversation and have it bootstrap itself into the high-taste version of it that you would like it to be.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to say to end this. This is cool. This is so cool.